Welcome to Foundational Spirituality. Foundational Spirituality is looking at different sources so we can find the universal truths that are throughout all books, throughout all stories and fables and everything. And tonight's focus, we're looking at the Four Agreements, which is a great book by Don Miguel Ruiz. Spirituality, as my new definition for it, is self-awareness and self-discovery. So that's it. Just spirituality is your own inward journey, finding your spirituality and finding yourself kind of thing. So that is what we're doing here. We're looking within and discovering ourselves. So tonight we are looking at the fourth agreement, which is always do your best. But in light of what happened this weekend with the two massacres, with the gun shootings and everything, it's hard to have a conversation about doing your best when we have something like that looming, in the background for us. So I found this part of the book of the Four Agreements that I thought was very poignant when I read it again today, exactly for kind of helping us understand what it is that's happening in the world. So I'll read this to you. We have a dysfunctional dream of the planet. The humans are mentally sick with a disease called fear. The symptoms of the disease are all the emotions that make up human suffering: anger, hate, sadness, envy, and betrayal. When the fear is too great, the reasoning mind begins to fail. So I'll say that again. When the fear is too great, the reasoning mind begins to fail, and we call this mental illness. Psychotic behavior occurs when the mind is so frightened and the wounds so painful that it seems better to break contact with the outside world, which is essentially what the shooters are doing. They're so consumed with a fear of the other that they feel the need to attack. I was listening on the way over here, and one of the shooters did a manifesto, is that right, on online about immigrations and immigrants and everything, which is really just a fear of other people. It's a fear that they don't look like me. It's coming from a lack of belief system, believing that there's only a limited amount of jobs and money and opportunities, and I have to keep all mine, and I can't allow anyone else. But I'm going to read this again. It was just so powerful. We have a dysfunctional dream of the planet, and humans are mentally sick with a disease called fear. The symptoms of the disease are all the emotions that make humans suffer: anger, hate, sadness, envy, and betrayal. When the fear is so great, the reasoning mind begins to fail, and we call this mental illness. Psychotic behavior occurs when the mind is so frightened and the wound so painful that it seems better to break contact with the outside world and really just break contact with reality. Of Course in Miracles says that the only thing real is love. Love is the only thing real. Everything else is part of the illusion. And he refers to that in this book also as the dream. And he calls it the dream. Of Course in Miracles calls it the illusion. That this reality, when we're believing when we're believing in fear, anger, hate, envy, and betrayal, when we're believing in those things, we're believing in the illusion. We're believing in the dream, as he calls it too. And the truth that is real, the universal truth, is that, oneness, we're all one, we're all on this planet, we're all human, we all breathe, we all bleed, we all have bones. That is the truth. And when we can start seeing our oneness different from our separation that many people, call the separation, then we'll be able to not live in this state of fear and not feel this disease of fear and anger and pain. I mean, what do you guys think? How has this impacted you over the weekend?
I actually didn't know what happened until today, and now I'm hearing from you. I didn't even know that there were two. I heard about the one in Ohio.
Yeah, in Texas, El Paso.
I didn't know there was a second one.
Yeah, same day. It's on Saturday. I think Texas was first. Which one was first? Texas was first, and then later in the day it was Ohio.
9 hours later. Yeah, I mean, what? Now that I do know, but I don't think about as much the person, the perpetrator, as I do about the people that are, I guess, the victims. I don't know how many people were killed, but I think about things like that more, like what was going. And granted, I will also say I don't think about these things a lot. I am not a news junkie. I'm not a political junkie, and I'm definitely not like a tragedy junkie. I don't.
So it sounds like you're not investing in the fear that is rampant in around this, which is good.
I definitely am not. I don't think about things like that. But what I do think about them, like when you bring this up, what I do think about is what was in the psyches of the victims that brought this situation to them. I'm not blaming them at all. But I think about things like that a lot, and I think about the Holocaust. I think about things like that a lot.
Right.
Like what's in the psyche that, because I believe that we bring things to us.
We do. That is a theory, a spiritual theory. Have you heard this before? This spiritual theory? That life is happening for us to grow and be stronger. So we're not a victim of life. So there are no victims in this. So there's no victims in the Holocaust, so to speak. And a theory is, because it's a little bit difficult to prove, but a theory is before we're born, we have a life agreement that we have decided at this moment that our life would be ended in this situation. So, for instance, there was a mother and a father with a 2-year-old that was killed, and both the mother and the father died, and the 2-year-old survived. So that 2-year-old has also made that agreement, before they were born, to lose their parents in such a tragic way. So now that 2-year-old their life is going to be in a specific trajectory of growth and overcoming and of this tragedy itself, and that's something that they agreed on. Also, that is a theory. It's a widely believed theory, but it is a theory that helps us explain that.
It's probably. I mean, it kind of makes. I think the thing is that you never really know what. I have a brother who died like a month and a half ago, and we weren't close. We weren't enemies, but we weren't. I mean, we hadn't talked. We hadn't talked about a decade, but a big part of the reason why was because he speak to our mother. We have different fathers, but there was some back and forth about his will and some other stuff. And one of my sisters was trying to basically take everything. Anyway. So it's working out, the situation, but, it had occurred to me that the reason why laws exist and legal stuff exists is that what's written down is important, because you don't know, like her thing was about what she thinks he would have wanted versus what was written down. And we don't know. We don't know what's in somebody else's heart and their head. Right? We don't know. So this is a very extreme example, and Michael, you can jump in anytime you want. I'm not trying to call, but any of those people could have wanted to die. Maybe they were looking for an out. Like I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying they all wanted to die. I'm not trying to say that.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, it's just like it's very hard to know what people are carrying.
Well,
really
I mean,
in their heart.
if you believe in the theory that they chose before they were born, then yes, they did choose that. So then that supports that theory. I mean, it's not a conscious thing that necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, or right.
Whereas there's also a belief system. Louise Hay talks about it, and other metaphysicians talk about it, that we attract illness. We want to be sick, so that for whatever reason, I broke a rib once because I wanted to take a break, wanted to rest, and so I fractured a rib so I could rest. I'm conscious of that was my. I drew that to me. Right. So yeah, that is a theory, also, kind of thing. Did they draw this to themselves? I would probably venture to say that this would probably fall more in the lines of, a decision that was made prior to being conscious, kind of thing. I wouldn't necessarily say that this was. We had attract a car accident to us. We damage our car. We do things like that. But I wouldn't say that there's something like this would just randomly. We would attract this randomly. Something as big as this. These are all theories. But some of it is comforting for some people, kind of thing. So
right, and I don't this is. I know that on the surface this is going to sound ridiculously horrible and callous, but it is. Maybe somebody there was like, I would love to die in a mass shooting because then I would be remembered in this way.
It's a little hard to prove, but yeah.
Oh, I'm not trying to prove it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, it's so hard to know.
We can't really know. Yeah, we can't really know. But anything you want to add to?
I'm actually probably the opposite. I'm a little bit of a news junkie, a little bit of a. So in New York, which is where I was there for 9/11, and every time I was in the subway, I'm like this. Moved here thinking okay, what's going to happen in I don't know how shortly after the shooting at the airport in Fort Lauderdale happened, right? Mm-hmm. So it was no place felt safer that you could escape it. So that was one thing that struck me. I felt like if you're not in a major city that you were okay. But the thing that you said that really struck me is the notion of when anger, hate is so great that it kind of takes over the reasoning mind. That to me is what's true. And I've seen that in people when they're trapped or feel like they're backed into a corner, and then they start doing these outrageous things that it just seems like it's because they kind of lose touch with.
And if you think about nationalism, do you know what a nationalist is? I mean, the one from Ohio, I think, considered himself a white nationalist. So that's somebody that puts their country above everything else, above even life. And so killing migrants or people coming across the border would be a nationalist kind of thing. It also leans towards a white supremacist. So a nationalist, a white supremacist, those are both based on fear, which is exactly what we're talking about here, and that their fear is so great and grandiose that they can't live their life without it. They can't see life without it. Their whole life is in existence with that fear, kind of thing. They can't see past it. So yeah, that's exactly, it just gets so overwhelming for them in their existence that it just overpowers them. There's another part that it's important to finish with, because this is a big part of doing your best. We must forgive those we feel have wronged us, not because they deserve to be forgiven, but because we love ourselves so much we don't want to keep paying for the injustice. So here he's saying, forgiving somebody else is releasing us from the injustice. It's not saying that what you did is okay, but it's saying that I'm no longer going to hold on to this injustice. And so if we don't want to have the dysfunctional dream of mental sickness with anger, hate, sadness, envy, and betrayal in our hearts, then we need to forgive the shooters. We need to forgive the people that, the person at the airport, the person in Parkland. We need to forgive all those people so that we're not holding on to that, so that we don't become sick with dysfunction and fear and anger and pain and suffering. What do you think of that?
There's a website that I follow too, which is Project Forgive, and it's a woman, Dr. Shawn Dupre, that she does a Facebook Live, and one time I asked her what was the lesson that took you the longest to learn, and she said forgiveness, and she talked about it in that way, because it is about freeing yourself up, right, from those things.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right.
Yeah. And forgiveness is something that we need to do all day, every minute of every day, for ourselves, for others, and forgiveness is the only way to heal. We can choose to forgive because we feel compassion for ourselves. We can choose to forgive because we feel compassion for ourselves. I love myself enough that I'm going to have compassion for me and forgive everybody and everything. The next part is, first we need to forgive our parents, our brothers, our sisters, our friends, and God. Once you forgive God, you can finally forgive yourself. Once you forgive yourself, the self-rejection in your mind is over. Self-acceptance begins, and the self-love will grow so strong that you will finally accept yourself just the way you are. That's the beginning of the free human. Forgiveness is the key. And these are right, it's only like in a couple paragraphs apart, where he's talking about the dysfunction and the dream and the mental illness of sick. It's mental illness that anger is, and then he's immediately going into forgiveness. I mean, those are the two biggest things that we're just really seeing right now in the news with these shooters and the people dying, and we have to remember that the most important thing that we do now is we start forgiving the shooters. We start forgiving the politicians that aren't making a change, that aren't making a difference. What do you think of that?
Well, I think it was Lori Cardona. I think it was her who said to me, or said that forgiveness is, or defined forgiveness as lack of judgment.
Mm-hmm.
And that,
because a judgment is how you hold a grudge, and
right,
and how you hold in and make separate. If you're forgiveness,
right,
then you are free of everything.
And that, and that was a real epiphany for me, because I was like, yes, that's what it would mean for me, because of everything you just said, and also because I think that there's a very, before that, I really had a different idea of what I thought forgiveness was. And I think that I could forgive somebody like the shooter while still at the same time saying they need to be punished. It's not, but I think that often people will say, well, what do you mean? We should just let them go, or this or that.
Right.
It's not.
And that's not forgiveness.
It's not.
Forgiveness is when you release it from inside of
right,
you, and they still are prosecuted for the wrongs that
right,
they've done by the law. So, forgiveness has nothing to do with their outcome. Forgiveness is all about you releasing it from within you.
But I do think that over the past, and maybe that's starting to become a little bit more common knowledge, but I definitely think that in the 90s and up until maybe 2010, that forgiveness was really very much about, maybe this was just for me, but I think that I picked this up, that it was about not just accepting the other person, but you accept the other person, you become friends with the other person, everything the other person does is okay. You know what I'm saying?
That doesn't have to be. Certainly it's
like a very Hallmark card.
Right, but that is not every definition of forgiveness.
Yeah, I don't even think
Like, it is one of the many definitions of forgiveness. Just because you forgive somebody doesn't mean you have to go and have lunch with them,
right,
or sit down with them. You know, like you can forgive a child molester that has wronged you, and still very much have them outside of your, safety zone.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, forgiveness does not mean that it requires you to have lunch and and tea and hang out and all that stuff. Another shooting, the church shooting. I don't remember where it was, but the one where the man came into the 12 people.
The black
said,
church.
Yeah, the black church. And after about 2 hours, he killed everybody there. Well, family members of one of the people that were there came out immediately and said, "We forgive the shooter." Immediately. Because they said, we are not going to take this pain into our future. We forgive the shooter here and now, so that we are no longer, our life is no longer impacted by the hatred and pain that this has caused.
As a matter of fact,
That's immediately. That's like the next day. That is
right.
a miracle.
But I think that kind of, that is what probably enables them more to feel the grief and sadness that they need to feel.
Mm-hmm. So they can go through those without the anger and hatred that can fester inside. I like to use the word metastasize. The anger and pain that can metastasize in you is in reference of cancer. I mean, anger is a cancer that is a sickness, as he called it too, that will just destroy you. Holding on to anger and pain will destroy you quicker than a bullet can. More vicious too, in that sense. But I mean, can you forgive the politicians that vote against gun rights?
I mean, I hate all politicians anyway. Well, pretty much all.
Hate's a strong word.
I know.
It festers and turns into a manifestation of cancer. You want to change a word?
Okay. Politicians kind of do turn me off.
Mm-hmm.
Even like the good guys.
Right.
I just don't. But I don't. But this is not, to me, this is so not about that. I mean,
what is it about, do you believe?
the fear.
It's fear.
What
It
you
is.
said.
It is fear.
This person's manifestation of their fear.
Mm-hmm.
And that fear would come out in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Probably just as tragic. Who knows? He could have set fire to. I mean, there's nothing that can really stop anything
Mm-hmm.
like that. Although I do believe. I mean, I also. Can I say I hate guns? Can I say hate?
I mean, hate's a
more
strong
than two,
word.
I know.
Hate is a 4-letter word, as
I
a lot of people refer to it.
But I mean, just as much like I don't like guns. I don't believe.
Right.
I mean, and I know people that own guns, and there's the whole thing about it's their own hands and better background. I mean, I just think. I mean, I don't like guns.
Right.
But I do think that this guy's fear would have been manifest in some other way.
Well, spiritually speaking, if we encourage everyone to wake up spiritually, did I say it before you got here? Was I just talking with you about that? Yeah. So awake spirituality, people that are spiritually awake are beginning to go within and find their self-discovery and their self-awareness, and starting to realize there isn't, like A Course in Miracles says, there is a better way. There is a better way. So a person that is spiritually awake, or the new catchphrase now is woke, when did you get woke, are people that believe that there can be another way. I don't have to be angry all the time. Life isn't bad all the time. Life can be good. When people start believing an alternative reality to what they have, from the illusion that they have, or the dream that he called it in the Four Agreements, when people start believing that, maybe I can be happy, maybe I can be a little more loving, maybe I can be more kind, that is a person that is waking up. And so our responsibility as spiritual people is to share that with as many people as we can, helping people to understand that there is another way. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm doing this. That's why I make my videos on Facebook. That's why I post, I take this and I post it on YouTube. So that is how we help these individuals overcome these fears, is by waking up more people every day.
It's funny because when you were asking about can you forgive the policymakers, I didn't even go there about like blaming or not. It was about, and how do they be persuaded or convinced, or, Maya Angelou, when you know better, you do better.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you just go forward and fix what the problems are, as opposed to trying to blame, or whether it's about, what they've done in the past that created this now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, going forward, how do we make sure?
Well, I mean, there's the big question. And what I'm talking about is, all day today I saw memes on Facebook. Mental illness is worldwide. America is the only one with gun problems. Anger and pain is worldwide. America is the only one with gun problems. These other countries have all those same problems that we have. They have the video games are being, blamed. They have all these other things, but they have strict gun laws. So that's what I kept seeing on Facebook today. And people are trying to tie this to mental illness, the games, nationalists, and all that other stuff. But
it's not. It's just this is one person, and clearly
it's two. Same day.
Two
different people.
Two people who really have. The part about the forgiveness or the lack of judgment, a lot of it for me is, I don't know what these people are like, but I know that to be inside their heads must be awful.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because I'm very well aware of the fact that, it took me a long time to realize that a lot of petty judgments that I had, or maybe not even petty, a lot of, criticism, anything that I had that I was thinking in my head was just a manifestation of the way that I felt about myself.
Mm-hmm.
And the more that I understood that, the less I started doing it, because I started to want to treat myself internally in my head in a better way.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot of time to get there, because you're not, and part of the thing is that these poor men, no one's born like that. That gets put into your head, just like it was put into my head.
Exactly. Yeah. And racism is something that is instilled by the people around the individuals. Absolutely. There's no question about that.
But it's also the lack of self-worth, because that's what I believe is at the root of racism.
Of Course in Miracles says that that everything comes from loving yourself, and everything that isn't loving yourself is from fear and all that. And so this is totally based in if you're not loving yourself or living in a state of love, then you're living in a state of fear. And in fear, there is no self-worth. There is no self-value. Right. All there is devastation, pain, anger, hurts, and all that. And not only that, when you're feeling all those things, your view of the world is exactly that. Your view of the world, it's in here too, I'll read it probably eventually, but your view of the world is exactly how you feel inside. So think about that. When you're angry and sad or in pain, you're going to see angry, sad, and people in pain in your eyes, in front of you. If you're feeling good, then you're going to see, bunnies and rainbows. So how you're feeling inside is the perception of the world that you're seeing around you. If you're feeling victimized and angry, then you're going to feel attacked by people. People's little comments are very attacking to you, and you're very much, did you hear what they said? Like, I can't believe it, You're going to interpret all the things that are said to you as personal attacks against you. So, yeah.
Can you come on Sunday?
So let me go back to the beginning of doing your best. So hold on a second. That was the part after doing your best and breaking old agreements. So now let's go back to doing your best. So I mean, the biggest thing about you always do your best. Your best isn't always going to be, the same every day. And if you think about it, these two individuals and what they did on Saturday, that was their best. And I say that because they were, like you just said, imagine being in their mind. Being in their mind with so much pain and anger and hurt and dysfunction and craziness, it created an illness in them of their illusion of what was real and reality. And so the best thing that they thought they could do was do exactly what they did. That was their best. Because in their illusionary mind, they thought that they're helping and all that. So that is an example of doing your best. So the fourth agreement, always do your best. Under any circumstance, always do your best, no more and no less, but keep in mind that your best is never going to be the same from one moment to the next. Everything is alive and changing all the time, so our best will sometimes be high quality and other times it will be not so good. When you wake up refreshed and energized in the morning, your best will be better than when you are tired at night. Your best will be different when you are healthy as opposed to sick, which is just what I said, or sober as opposed to drunk. Your best will depend on whether you feel wonderful and happy or upset, angry, and jealous. In your everyday moods, your best can change from one moment to another, from 1 hour to the next, from one day to another. Your best will also change over time. So, just remembering that and then loving yourself afterwards and saying, okay, I have made mistakes and I've said things and done things that weren't always good for people or, different things like that. And then I have to get present with my own self-awareness, my own spirituality, and I have to say, well, you know what? At that moment, with the information that I had, I did my best. And then I'm not going to be self-abusive to myself. I'm going to love myself and say, my best wasn't as good as it was the day before or the day after, but on that particular moment, I was doing my best. That's loving. Now that's being kind to yourself. And just being aware and recognizing that your best is going to hinder upon what's happening in your life and how you're feeling. Regardless of the quality, keep doing your best. No more, no less. No more, no less than your best. If you try hard to do more than your best, you will spend more energy than is needed, and in the end, your best will not be good enough. When you overdo, you deplete your body and go against yourself. It will take you longer to accomplish your goal, but if you do less than your best, you subject yourself to frustration, self-judgment, guilt, and regrets. So we are not looking for frustration, self-judgment, guilt, and regrets. So doing our best at the moment means that we are being present to that, and we're not slacking off, and we're not trying to overdo it, because here you're saying overdoing it is also going to drain our energy. Just do your best in any circumstance in your life. It doesn't matter if you are sick or tired. If you always do your best, there is no way you can judge yourself. And if you don't judge yourself, there is no way you're going to suffer from guilt, blame, and self-punishment. So notice here the words that he's using. Subject yourself to frustration, self-judgment, guilt, and regrets. And then he says guilt, blame, and self-punishment. So all of these are negative words. And we need to be present in our spirituality, our self-awareness, that anything that isn't moving us in a positive, loving direction isn't in our best good. So any experience that we have where blame, punishment, judgment, frustration, regrets, anger, pain, any of those things, we are moving away from our life's purpose and moving in the direction that is going against what we naturally are meant to be and do. So I like the way he's using those words to really emphasize that point. By always doing your best, you will break a big spell that you have been under. There was a man who wanted to transcend his suffering, so he went to a Buddhist temple to find a master to help him. He went to the master and asked, "Master, if I meditate for 4 hours a day, how long will it take me to transcend?" The master looked at him and said, "If you meditate 4 hours a day, perhaps you will transcend in 10 years. Thinking he could do better than his best, the man said, "Oh, master, what if I meditate for 8 hours a day? How long will it take me to transcend?" The master looked at him and said, "If you meditate for 8 hours per day, perhaps you will transcend in 20 years. But why will that take longer? Why will it take me longer if I meditate more?" the man asked. The master replied, "You are not here to sacrifice your joy and your life." So I'll read that again. "You are not here to sacrifice your joy and your life. You are here to live and be happy and love. If you can do your best in 2 hours of meditation, but you spend 8 hours instead, you will only grow tired, miss the point, and you won't enjoy your life. Do your best, and perhaps you will learn that no matter how long you meditate, you can live, love, and be happy." So here he's tying words to what our life's purpose is. Live, love, and be happy. Don't sacrifice your life. Live, happy, and love. So he's giving us a clear indication of what our life's purpose is and what our life's purpose is not. And these are really important clues for us to hold on to as we're moving in our life. So, how often are we doing things in our days and weeks that isn't beneficial for us, that isn't making us happy, that isn't bringing us joy and fulfillment, going against our life's purpose? And that's when we have to have that spirituality, that self-awareness, that we say, okay, this isn't, I'm doing this and it's not making me happy. I think I'm doing the right thing by doing this. Working at a job for 40 years that you hate, that's not living your life's purpose. That's not living your joy. Now, if you've got other life purposes that bring you lots of joy, but another portion that pays your bills, you're at least got some purpose and joy in your life, kind of thing. But that's really important for us to look at for ourselves. When you always do your best, take action. Doing your best is taking the action because you love it, not because you're expecting a reward. Most people do exactly the opposite. They only take action when they expect a reward, and they don't enjoy the action. And that's the reason why we don't do our best. So that's taking action for the reward. And a lot of people do their job as that. They take action for the reward of the income, of the money. And then they can take a weekend vacation, or they can take the money that they're using to go and take a longer week-long vacation or something. I think that times are changing. It seems now that more people are waking up to this, and more people are having the conversation about this, about, I want more purpose in my life. I want to feel better in my life. I want to do something that I enjoy. Are you hearing that more often?
No, absolutely. It's and that's why even if it's like in the job you're in, if there's things that you can do that fulfill what your purpose is, whether it's developing people or growing or nurturing or inspiring, like that, it doesn't matter what your job or you're physically doing, if you can bring that part of it to it. So that's how I feel like I'm aligned with what I'm, who I am with what I'm doing.
I mean, I've heard bus drivers. I've heard the expression where wherever you are is your church, and you're preaching the gospel by every experience that you're doing. And I've heard bus drivers that positively impact their riders because of their bubbly personality, the way they greet people. They get to know their names, they know their routes, their stops, and they just bring joy to people. And they're a bus driver. That's all they're doing. It's just driving a bus, getting people. But what they're doing is that they're sharing that love and passion that they feel inside with all the people, all the riders, and positively impacting people's day. And that's how they're living their passion. It has nothing to do with what they're actually doing for the job. It's how they're viewing and how their personality is and how that's impacting it. But I'm hearing more younger people talking about wanting to do something that brings them passion, wanting to focus on a career that brings them passion.
I mean,
is that something that you guys did yourself?
Okay, I think society is evolving in a different kind of way because, I don't know, again, I heard it on a documentary, somebody else said this, not me, I didn't come up with this, but they did say that, there was a time when your purpose was to put dinner on the table. Even if you were
spend 12 hours on a farm.
Yeah, even if you were very well, to do, like, the purpose of work was to provide for, basic stuff, or even more than basic stuff. This idea of work being a way to find inner fulfillment is newer in society. And I do think, but I think that I'm not sure that I think people understand it exactly, because, especially younger people. Because I think younger people, I do sort of hear it, but to me, in their minds, and the way that I hear them talk about it, it's that they should be getting everything they want without putting in effort to get it. That just having the passion is what should manifest it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not...
And that probably is the case in some cases and probably not in others. So, I mean, that's something that isn't necessarily provable, but it is a theory.
So what's not provable?
That they just want everything handed to them.
Right, I don't think everybody feels that way.
Right, yeah.
But I mean, I guess what I'm saying, though, is that I think that there's a line there, and I think maybe some people might misunderstand the line. But I also think that...
But I just think that we're more focused on... I think that there is a shift, and it's happening in younger generations. And I know this because I read Michelle Obama's book, and she was in her 40s, maybe, when she was a lawyer, and very unhappy. And so this is in her book, when she talks about it. And so she's very unhappy, and she decides she wants to make a career change. She's been a lawyer, so I don't know if she's in her 30s or 40s. I don't know the exact age or whatnot. And she's like, I'm done. I can't be this lawyer anymore. And so she's driving in the car, and she's like, I'm going to tell my mom. Now, mind you, her mom comes from the
At 40? She was 40?
I think she's in her... I
How
can't
old is she
remember, 50s, yeah. I mean, maybe it was late 30s, I don't know the time period. So she's in the car with her mom, and her mom is from the generation that she was raised.
Yeah.
You just worked. You weren't happy, you didn't love your job, you just were happy to have one.
Right.
And so her mom came from the generation of whatever you could do to make money is what you do. Put food on the table, put clothes on your kid's back, roof over your head. That's all that's important. And so here, this next generation, Michelle, is because of what her parents did, just by doing the job, she was able to have the wherewithal to get a college degree, better her career, and now she's at a point where, like, I'm not happy, and she has the opportunity to change that. And so she tells her mother, I'm not happy, I'm going to change my career, I don't like what I'm doing, this is what's happening. And her mother said, don't worry about being happy. Just keep doing this, making the money, and when you retire, then you can be happy. So if you hear that, it's generational. I mean, she's speaking from what she did and she knows, but yet the next generation is starting to have the awareness of life doesn't have to be this way anymore. It used to be. We used to have to do this. I mean, centuries up until the 20th century, people didn't start thinking about liking what they did for a living. It's only been the last, 50 years that people started focusing on that. So we're becoming aware and awake. And so here she is making that decision. Now let's look at her children, Sasha and Malia. They're going to start out doing something that they feel more drawn to and passionate about. Because I believe that those generations are changing. I believe that we're in a good period for that because more people are becoming spiritually awake and are more interested in doing things that...
I actually think, too, that it probably went from just being passionate about what you love to do and doing that and being happy to, like, making a difference in the world. So, like, I know a woman in New York that has this organization, Build Like a Woman, and it's really about women's small businesses and helping them get off the ground. And people at work are trying to make sure that, whether there's equality in pay or diversity. So it's a bigger, like, societal change they want to impact too, not just personal fulfillment, right? It's not just I want to be happy, but how do I make an impact on a larger scale? I think is also another way people are thinking about their jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. Really cool. Yeah. And even the bus driver, he's thinking about how can he make people happy? How can he bring a smile to people's faces? So, I mean, I think there's just an awareness, a self-awareness now that people are starting to come around to that. And I believe that the generations are changing. If we like what we do, if we always do our best, then we are really enjoying life, back to our life's purpose. We are having fun and we don't get bored. We don't have frustrations. Because, frustrations are going to lead to fear, and fears are going to lead to pain and anger and all those other things that we talked about, which turns into the sickness that we don't want. If you take action because you have to, then there is no way you are going to do your best. Then it is better not to do it at all. No, you do your best because doing your best all the time makes you so happy. He's just repeating that. Our purpose is happy. Our purpose is joy. Our purpose is having a fulfilled life. Action is about living fully. Inaction is the way that we deny life. Inaction is sitting in front of the television every day for years because you are afraid to be alive and take the risk of expressing what you are. Expressing what you are is taking action. You can have many great ideas in your head, but what makes the difference is the action. Without the action upon the idea, there will be no manifestation, no results, and no rewards. So taking action. Going back to this weekend, what do you think are some actions that we can take? And how can we be our best with with what's happened over the weekend, with the shootings and all that? Have you guys thought about that?
One thing that I think is important is to talk about it and not just ignore it and pretend it didn't happen. So that's one thing we did at work today. Like a lot of people were just talking about their feelings and what it meant, just like you started this with. Because I think in order to figure out what to do, it's just like acknowledge what state you're in. But I think like gun laws, to your point earlier about whether there's mental illness everywhere, but if there's a problem here, I think that has to change. So So whatever we can do to help those legislation, policy changes.
Yeah. Look at Puerto Rico and what they just did. I mean, they got together and blocked off roads and highways, and they said, no, we are not going to go another day with you as our leader. Another day. And he's gone. I mean, that's huge. That is a bunch of people doing their best, and they did it peacefully. They didn't do it angrily. They didn't, throw bombs and do all kinds of damage or anything. They did a peaceful protest, and they said, no, we're not going to do that. I mean, that's just doing their best. That is awesome. Yeah, we have to think about that. We have to think of how are we living in this world. We are participants in this. How can we make a change? How can we positively impact? And if these things that are happening in our life, how can we make a difference? How can we, do our best with that? How can we take, like what just said, the inaction is not living your life. Expressing what you are is taking action. When you surrender and let go of the past, you allow yourself to be fully alive in the moment. Letting go of the past means you can enjoy the dream that is happening right now. So that's just a simple, everyone talks about all there is the present moment. Every metaphysician, spiritual leader, all talks about that. Every book, every Course in Miracles, The Science of Mind, everything. It's all about being present. There is no past and there is no future. Louise Hay says, if you're depressed, it's about the past. And if you're having anxiety, it's about the future. So depression is you're leaning in the backwards, and anxiety is you're afraid of what's coming up. So that's, I don't tend to have depression. I do tend to run a little bit anxious about the future kind of thing. That I've noticed for myself. So that's an easy indicator for yourself. How are you feeling? Are you feeling sad and depressed more often, or are you anxious about what's going to transpire in the future? Not enjoying what is happening right now is living in the past and being only half alive. This leads to self-pity, suffering, and tears. You were born with the right to be happy. You were born with the right to be happy. You were born with the right to love, to enjoy, and to share your love. You are alive, so take your life and enjoy it. I mean, here he is saying that again. Enjoy, enjoy, enjoy. Love, love, love. Be happy, be happy, be happy. A Course in Miracles talks about your inheritance all the time. And you were born with the right to be happy. So A Course in Miracles would say it is your inheritance to be happy. It is not earned. You don't have to do good deeds to be happy. It is your given right from birth that you were born that way. You were born to live a joyful life, to be happy. You don't have to have penance. You don't have to do Hail Marys or anything else in order to be, to earn your happiness. Because you breathe every day, you deserve that happiness. So that is a huge thing. There are people in the world that don't believe that they deserve to be happy because they have such a low self-worth and low self-esteem and low self-value. They accept the bad things that happen to them. They accept the negative things that happen to them as, this always happens to me. But that's not how life is supposed to be. And what he talks about in this book, when you read the whole thing, is that you have to start changing those mindsets, changing those old belief systems, and starting to get present, again, that's self-awareness, that's spirituality, self-awareness, so that you can start saying, what story am I telling myself? And when you're telling a story of, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, bad things happen to me, that is a belief system that you need to shift and change, and that's what he talks about in this book. If you do your best always, over and over again, you will become a master of transformation. Practice makes the master. Doing your best, you become a master. Everything you have ever learned, you learn through repetition. You learn to write, to drive, and even walk by repetition. So that's really important for us to acknowledge. So often we get frustrated when we're not in a place that we want to be, or if a learning is hard or it's difficult, and how long is it going to take me to get this? How long is it going to take me to forgive? How long is it going to take me to work past something? It's going to take as long as it is. You didn't learn how to drive in one day. You didn't become a good driver in one night. You didn't learn how to, balance, and you didn't learn how to write in one day. I mean, anything can take time sometimes, and we have to recognize that.
I think too about like gratitude when they say write down things you're grateful for every day, because it is a practice.
Mm-hmm. Everything is a practice.
You
Yes.
get so caught up in everything. So to me, like that idea of like repetition.
Yeah.
The more that you focus on it and try to shift your mind that way, then it does.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Retrain it.
Yeah. Everything we're doing is a practice. Or being happy is a practice. There's some people that struggle with happiness and joy. I've met people that aren't physically able to give out a compliment because they have so little happiness and joy in themselves, and such a low self-worth, that they physically can't offer out a compliment to someone else. That's amazing, when their self-value is so low that they don't even have enough to give out at all. You don't need to worship idols of the Virgin Mary and the Christ or the Buddha. You can if you want to. If it feels good, do it. Your own body is a manifestation of God, that's exactly what A Course in Miracles says too. Like, God is within us. We are one with God, one and the same. Your own body is a manifestation of God. If you honor your body, everything will change for you. When you practice giving love to every part of your body, you plant the seeds of love in your mind. When they grow, you will love, honor, and respect your body immensely. So, that's, how often are we poisoning ourselves with food and sugar and, excess and too much, or drugs and alcohol and all that other stuff. And all that is a way to punish ourselves for the lack of love and the lack of self-worthy that we are. The people that are most loving to themselves are the ones that aren't overeating, that aren't they eat what they need, they eat healthy foods, they're treating their body with love and kindness, kind of thing. Every action then becomes a ritual in which you are honoring God. After that, the next step is honoring God with every thought, every emotion, every belief, even what is right or wrong. Every thought becomes a communion with God, and you will live a dream without judgments, victimization, and free of the need to gossip and abuse yourself. So here he's adding more words in on how we're not supposed to live. So we're not supposed to live with judgments, victimization, free of the need to gossip and abuse yourself. So he talks about the direction we should go in, which is love, happiness, joy, pleasure, leaving behind judgments, victimization, gossip, and abuse of the self. So he's paving the way of a clear path. So that is it for the always doing your best. And now I'll just do a little bit of the breaking old agreements. Everyone talks about freedom. True freedom has to do with the human spirit. It is the freedom to be who we really are. Who stops us from being free? We stop ourselves. So freedom is being our most authentic self, being us all the time. And that is the spirituality, the going within, getting to know yourself, getting to know your authentic self, and being that authentic self as much as possible in every situation, in every event, party, or place that you go, anywhere and everything. And that was a lesson that I didn't even realize that I wasn't doing myself. When I had a spiritual journey, went to Europe. I backpacked for 8 months to find myself. I got divorced, and I went there to find myself. I also walked the Camino, El Camino de Santiago. And that was something that I learned on there because I was meeting new people every day, and here I was, the only gay person that I was meeting, and everyone else that was straight. And I was like, how do I be myself? And, are they going to be okay with me and stuff? And I learned day after day after day that, yes, the more I showed them my authentic self, the better relationships that I got. And what I had done in my past growing up was, or my whole life was hiding my authentic self because I didn't want to. I had a preconceived idea of making people uncomfortable if I was myself. But what I learned in Europe, the more I was myself, the more people liked me, and that was huge. And that is a big part of our life, is to be our most authentic self at all times. If we see a child who is 2 or 3, perhaps 4 years old, we find a free human. Why is the human free? Because this human does whatever he or she wants to do. The human is completely wild, just like a flower, a tree, or an animal that has not been domesticated. When he talks about the domestication in this book, a child is taught by the elders around them what to do and what not to do. And that's called the domestication. And then in the same thing, in a nationalist house or a white supremacist house, they're taught the same thing. The others are wrong, brown skin is bad, to be feared, to be hated, to be angered. That is a domestication, according to the word that he's using. And so as children grow up, they become domesticated. They're given a set of belief systems that is brought to them from their parents and their elders, and then they become that belief system. And what he's saying in our life at this stage, being the reader of this book, is that we need to look at our belief systems and our domestication and say, what is and isn't going to work for me anymore. So when we start looking at that, that's when we can start becoming free, because everyone talks about freedom. Who stops us from being free? Us. We stop ourselves. So when we can start looking at our belief systems and letting go of belief systems that aren't true for us anymore, then we will become free in the happiness, joy, and peace that we're looking for. Does that make sense? Yeah? Very young children are not afraid to express what they feel. They are also loving, that if they perceive love, they melt into love. They are not afraid to love at all. That is the description of a normal human being. As children, we are not afraid of the future or ashamed of the past. Our normal human tendency is to enjoy life, to play, to explore, to be happy, and to love. Again, it's repeating that same line over and over and over again. And how many times have we been afraid ourselves to express love to people, to a relationship, or to friends, or to whatever? One of the most impressive things that I saw years ago, there was an acquaintance that I had met, and we had done volunteering. It was for HRC, Human Rights Campaign, and this person was the chairperson. And shortly after we met, and after several meetings and being together and stuff like that, his greeting was, "Okay, all right, see you later. I love you." I was like, the first time he did that, I was like, what? He just said, "I love you" to me. Like, are we that close? And then the next time he did it again, and it made me feel good. It made me feel happy, and I liked it, and I was like, wow. I thought, I'm going to do that. I'm going to start incorporating that into my vocabulary. I'm going to start saying that to the people that I care for in my life. And so I did. And I immediately added that into my existence. And I started telling the people that were close to me, I love you. And it really made me feel better. But that's, that was being my authentic self, was me being able to express that love, just like a child. So I'll read this again. Our normal human tendency is to enjoy life, to play, to explore, and to be happy and to love. What has happened is that we have the book of law. He's talked about this in previous chapters. The book of law is our belief system. The big judge, which is the judging critical side, and the victim part of us that is also. So those are the three big negatives that we carry around in us. We are no longer free because the judge, the victim, and the belief system don't allow us to be who we really are. Our minds have been programmed with all that garbage. We are no longer happy. So one of the things that he talks about in here is how we have to, it's time to free yourself from the tyranny of the judge by changing the foundation of your own agreements. It is time to be free from the role of the victim. So when we attach ourselves to that victim mindset, and to that judging mindset, that is a part of, he calls it the parasite in the head, which of Course in Miracles will call that the ego voice. Eckhart Tolle calls it the ego voice. Michael J. Singer calls it the roommate in your head. He calls it the parasite, and he refers to those three: the judge, the victim, and what was the other one? The book of laws, the big judge, and the victim are the 3 points of that are always speaking in your head. And he calls them the parasite. The real you is still the little child who never grew up. Sometimes that little child comes out when you're having fun or playing, when you feel happy, when you are painting or writing poetry or playing the piano or expressing yourself in some way. These are the happiest moments of your life, when the real you comes out, when you don't care about the past and you don't worry about the future and you are childlike. So here he's saying, if you're not depressed or anxious about the past and the future, that is when you can be your true self, which is the child within. A lot of metaphysical groups refer to that as the child within. It's always there in us, and what we do is we try to suppress that, because that's how we've been domesticated into believing that's how we need to live our life. We can't have fun. We can't be joyous and let that people see that child within, our authentic self, because that's not adult. That's not how adults do things. Adults have responsibilities. Adults have jobs that we have to do and all that. But here he's saying, if you want that happiness, getting in contact with the present moment as much as possible, and then allowing that joyous feeling to come out, that is expressing yourself in the best way possible. Yes? Yeah? Good. The freedom we are looking for is the freedom to be ourselves, to express ourselves. But if we look at our lives, we will see that most of the time we do things just to please others, just to be accepted by others, rather than living our lives to please ourselves. That is what has happened to our freedom. I mean, that's just adulting, That's just, what we've decided, and the belief system that we've made up about being an adult is, I have to please others over me. It's more important that other people are happy. I'll sacrifice. No, none of that is true. And when we start looking at ourselves and our own spirituality and finding that inner guidance, that inner voice, then we can start recognizing that we're doing that we're not putting ourselves first, that we're living for other people. Like Michelle Obama, if she was still living for other people, she would have stayed a lawyer, because that's what other people thought she should do. That's what other people thought was the right thing to do, was to stay a lawyer and not change careers to go into she went into the nonprofit thing. But she didn't. She decided that I'm not going to live my life for other people. She got in touch with herself, and she said, what is going to authentically make me happy is not doing this anymore and going into the nonprofit, and making less money. That was what she realized she wasn't going to live her life for other people.
Wait, but still being a lawyer in the nonprofit world?
Well, I mean, she's what's your lawyer? Always a lawyer, but
You know what I mean.
but no, I don't think she was a lawyer for a nonprofit. She did other things.
Oh.
I don't remember. It's been a while since I read it, but she wasn't assisting as a lawyer for the nonprofit. She had a different job.
Because
Description.
I think that it can also be, it's like which comes first, the chicken or the egg.
Mm-hmm.
And also that book. What was the name of that book that brought sunshine?
Oh, The Sun Does Shine?
The Sun Does Shine.
Yeah.
Like, is it, and it's probably different for different people. It can be from the inside out or the outside.
Mm-hmm.
So it's possible. I'm just using Michelle Obama as an example, right? It's possible she could have stayed a lawyer and found a different way to find purpose and joy within herself. Like that, and that's why I think it's a tricky balance, and that's why when you were talking about the younger generation, I do think it's tricky, because I think it's, or you talk about this bus driver is a very good example, of somebody who had joy within and probably would be able to have that joy really no matter what they were doing. So then it becomes less about what am I doing, to fulfill myself, versus being fulfilled at whatever I do.
Mm-hmm. Or just being at peace with whatever you do.
Yeah.
I know recently I had a learning, one of my jobs is a real estate appraiser, and I had a learning recently where I realized that I wasn't having as much spirituality while I was doing the job of appraising.
Mm-hmm.
So I was putting my spirituality aside, and I was feeling angry and frustrated and annoyed and all these other things. And then I realized, I was like, wait a minute. And I was like, this isn't how I should, be applying to anything. I should be living a happy, joyous life. So I had to start introducing more pleasant emotions during my day. And one of the things that I know, and I tell people, is you always have to remain neutral and not get upset and not get angry and frustrated and stuff, because that's not our life's purpose. And so I started having to apply that for myself in one of my jobs that I was doing. So I was essentially taking a job that doesn't make me spiritually rich, but applying my spiritual principles so it's not making me unhappy.
Right, because I think that a trap can be, if I say that if I become a basketball player, then that means that I'm going to be happy. Then you become the basketball player and you realize, oh, it wasn't playing basketball that was going to make me happy.
Mm-hmm.
Because they say that lottery, a high percentage of lottery winner, that story. That's a perfect example, really, of what we're talking about.
Yeah, I know somebody that became a doctor, and then after he became a doctor, he's doing, working in a hospital, that his entire life was just being consumed with the hospital, and he realized, I am not happy. I am not happy being a doctor in a hospital. And what he eventually was able to do was he was able to move into administration at the hospital. So he was no longer on calls, up all night, having to go in, never being able to take a vacation or leave, and that high stress and high anxiety. He just realized that was making him unhappy. But then when he was able to find happiness, still in the same field, even in the same hospital, but just doing a different job. But yeah. All right, well, it's about time, so we will finish there. So that is everything for about doing your best. And especially with what's happened this weekend, we have to do our own work. How can we live in this world and do our best? Is there something that I'm doing that I can do more of to contribute to the goodness of the world? And how can I do that? And what we shouldn't be doing, which he talks about, is anger, pain, frustration, judgments, and all that. Well, if that's the truth, then we need to look at how we're showing up on Facebook or social media. Are we doing that? Are we being proponents of anger and hate? Are we criticizing and judging and all that on our social media? Or are we being the voice of love and encouraging change and encouraging, all that? That's something that I've been impacted with in my life and observing. And that's something that I'm looking at for myself, so I can find my voice, through social media and through what I'm doing for people and stuff. But yeah, that's what I'll give you as a takeaway: is how can you do your best in today's world and with today's tragedies and difficulties and hardships and all that? How can we help wake people up, spreading love and joy and happiness and letting people know about the truths of the world that we learn in the books that we read? How can we spread that and help other people? Because that's it. That's what we're here for. We're here to be love and share love. And every way that we can do that is we're living our life's purpose. So go out there and love the world. Thank you. I'll end this. We'll do here. You can take a card and we'll read that.
Just take the card.
Then we'll just read it and then